Gregg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Russian Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. John Solomon of The Hill. Remember, it was people like John and so many others, too many to name, that got the ball rolling. And piece by piece, we've been able to see that the very thing Democrats thought they had against Donald Trump were the very things the Democrats themselves were involved in. So I think actually this was the best case scenario for the president, Greg, but they already had his answers. So this is like a dog and pony show to me.
Donald Trump has been extraordinarily cooperative and transparent and forthcoming and has talked openly and publicly, as you well know, about all of the issues that Mueller will be asking him. I mean, just think of it, 1.4 million pages of documents the Trump campaign produced. 20 White House staffers gave interviews to Mueller's investigators, even more from his campaign. And again, Trump has talked repeatedly and has provided these answers publicly. On the subject of collusion, he's repeatedly said, I didn't coordinate or conspire or collude with any Russians. I'm unaware of anybody who did. You know, Michael Flynn, did you direct Michael Flynn to talk with Russians during their transitions? The president would say, I didn't, but my staff did. Of course they did. It would be irresponsible not to. You know, the Trump Tower meeting, the president has said...
That's standard operating procedure for an incoming administration, for somebody that has been appointed to a top position to meet their soon-to-be counterpart. That makes sense.
It's what all incoming transition teams, including Obama's and all his predecessors, did. The Trump Tower meeting, the president has said, I didn't know anything about it in advance. Mueller knows the answer to that. And, you know, Russian hacking, the president has always said, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't participate in it. And so Mueller has the answers to all the main questions.
Let me bring John Solomon in here. You know, John, there are other issues that are going to come out of this. There was a Rowan Scarborough piece out in the Washington Times on Sunday about how conservatives and the president are demanding a probe into the Clinton Steele Moscow links themselves. And right. I know you've been working on this story.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing that I learned today, Sean, and I'll bring it on your show tonight as well. On December 5th, there is a plan for House Republicans to hold a hearing into the Clinton Foundation and its foreign operations. And one of the things that they're considering doing is bringing in the prosecutor who's supposed to have been looking at this issue for the last 15 months and saying, what have you found? You've had 15 months. There's been lots of media reports that suggest there was wrongdoing. There were audits. There are other things that look to be crooked, and we want to know what's going on. I think you're going to see a lot of this next year. I think you're going to see Lindsey Graham doing some great work as the new chairman of Senate Judiciary Committee. You're going to see Chuck Grassley at Senate Finance still dig into some of these issues. And I think we'll learn for the first time in December what this guy Huber, this U.S. attorney in Utah, who is named as a special prosecutor for all things Clinton, what he's turned up. And we may be surprised a little bit by some of the...
Are we ever going to get the answers to the Clinton Foundation and the amount of monies that were paid to them? Are we ever going to get information to
I believe
Uranium One questions that exist that we haven't gotten to the bottom to? Look, if the Democrats, if their decision now is that they want to spend the next 2 years not legislating but investigating, well, the Republicans still have the Senate, and the president can still unlock the keys and unredact FISA memos and applications and Group of 8 information and 302 information that I think would probably not be in the best interests of many, many people involved in wrongdoing as it relates to these issues. Would you?
I agree. I think the loss of the House has no bearing on the ability of the president to completely exonerate himself as he's going. But the first step in that exoneration is when Bob Mueller says there was no collusion. That's the most important one for the country. And I think we're getting closer to that moment when Bob Mueller might make that declaration. And after that, then I think you go back and you unravel through the declassification all of the abuses that occurred in the FBI, the political abuses. So
why if Mueller's mandate had more to do with this than how somebody fills out a loan application, why hasn't he done it?
Yeah, well, because the way Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein set this up, they had the IG and Huber take on everything that wasn't Russia-related. And the only things that are related, you know, Mueller has kept a narrow scope, which is, was there collusion? And in the process of trying to prove collusion, you try to flip people with other crimes. That's an old mob tactic, right? But at the end of the day, there's not been a single prosecution of an American that has proven anything close to collusion, and we're 2 years in the investigation. I think we can assume there won't be.
Yeah. Let me get back to the only thing that it seems that there's a possibility that they might be going after, and I interviewed him on the show a while back, is they seem to be obsessed with Roger Stone and Jerome Corsi, and the fact that they were looking or seeking or getting word that there might be some type of information that I guess eventually came out from WikiLeaks. When I interviewed Julian Assange, he swore that the information never came from Russia or never came from any state, and we never got any answers on that. I'll ask you about this on the other side. I mean, could that boomerang? I think that in a big sense it could, but time is going to tell. Right, as we continue with both Gregg Jarrett and John Solomon, Greg, the two people that Mueller seems to be focused on the most here, Jerome Corsi said that he believed that he was about to be indicted for lying. Again, lying. We're back to that again. I guess speaking to the FBI or anybody ever is a dangerous situation for anybody. And Roger Stone, and apparently there was an exculpatory email that was revealed by NBC that might have blown that theory out of the water. And this idea of bringing Julian Assange to the United States. The one thing I always thought about Assange is he would know where that information came from, wouldn't he?
He probably would.
And he could probably prove it, couldn't he?
He could, but I don't know if he would. Look, going after Jerome Corsi and Rogers.
Why would the New York Times that printed the same information not be in the same trouble?
Well, because ever since the Pentagon Papers case, we don't prosecute news organizations for releasing classified information, even if it was stolen. That's been the standard.
So then what if WikiLeaks is claiming that they're a media organization?
I don't know if Julian Assange would qualify, but he might.
He might. What do you think, John?
Yeah, listen, I think at the end of the day, the Roger Stone prosecution, if it occurs, is going to look like the Mike Flynn prosecution and the George Papadopoulos prosecution. It's going to be a false statements case having nothing to do with collusion with Russia. Now, Democrats might try to spin it and saying, well, if you colluded with Assange, maybe it's like colluding with the Russians, but that's a farcical argument. And if you make that case, then you have to accuse every media that ever used a document from Assange or used a document from Snowden. Remember, newspapers won Pulitzers writing off of Snowden's stolen documents. You have to make the same accusation. It's a silly and farcical thing. They'll probably try it, but at the end of the day, the most you're going to get out of this, from what we can tell, is a false statements case. And that's going to be the story of the Mueller prosecution. It's all going to be 1,001 false statements and not a whole lot of meat on the original core allegations.
What does that say, though?
Mueller could never win a false statement case if he ever prosecuted. It requires knowledge, intent, and willfulness under the statute. Right. If your recollection of something is different than the FBI or Mueller's interpretation, that's not a crime.
That's
all right. Thank you both. You're both your work. We'll have more on this. John has something breaking tonight he's going to share with us. He can't tell us now. He's putting the finishing touches on it. Correct as we speak, John?
That's correct. We'll be talking about it tonight.
All right. We'll see that tonight on Hannity. We'll break it. That's all coming up 9 Eastern.